Hi, everyone. I'd like to share some thoughts on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Um, Basically, I want to do a few things. I want to talk about violence when it's just. I want to talk about war and when that's just. And if you've watched any of my videos, you probably have a good idea over my thoughts on that. Um, I want to talk about my reaction to the Ukraine and also the implications of commenting on um, things that are going on from a moral standpoint and whether that's even um, rational or justified or moral to do that. So, I guess I'll start with my own reaction. I feel that I have been coasting in my life. Um, I made a video, I think, in the beginning of 2021, talking about how I didn't really want to talk about divine truth things because I felt like I didn't know what I was talking about. And I think there is a relationship between knowing and doing. If you know something to be true, you're probably going to act in such a way to 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 suggest that you do actually know that thing. So if you know that, you know, falling off a cliff will lead to your death, you are probably going to avoid cliff edges, you know. And I began to see that a lot of the things that I thought I knew, I didn't actually know because I wasn't acting that way. So I feel like I've been growing in my awareness of the fact that I don't want to change, that my desire to change myself, to improve myself, to grow in love is actually very low. It's close to non existent, is how I look at it. And I think that is proven in my day to day life. I do know a lot of the things that I could change that that would benefit myself and those around me and the world if I were to change. And, um, you know, I don't see myself changing in those areas. And I know that if I were to change in those areas, that would suggest, you know, a forward momentum. But yeah, it's just, I don't see that. So just coming into greater knowledge of all the ways in which I do not want to change, my general lack of desire has been the biggest thing going on in my life in the last year or so. Um, so I guess I've been struggling and wrestling with the with what that means. What does it mean when you don't want to change? I think I'm going to upload a video here shortly about with this one guy who has a very good argument for changing, and he suggests that it's, you know, if you don't want to change for yourself and for your own life to be better, perhaps there's other reasons why you could change. It strikes me that I'm having a lot of pain in my heart right now. Um, I've been noticing some health issues that could lead to, that will lead to, you know, my um, possibly untimely death because I'm 36 now, going on 37, and if I were to die before 40, that's generally young. Um, but, you know, I don't really see my own death as something that's undeserved or something. I think someone dying at 40 is almost as bad as someone who dies at 80. But anyway, yeah, the pain in my heart is going away a little bit. Um, as I talk. Anyway, I've been coasting. And um, I've been listening to a lot of Tim Pool. He's a conservative news commentator, um, and I've also been listening to Ramsey Poll, which a lot of people would consider far right extremist. Probably one of the most uh, controversial topics that he would talk about and agree with is the possibility of having a ethnically white nation. So you could say he's a white nationalist. So me even talking about watching him and talking about my interest in what he's saying could label me as a white nationalist. I guess you could say that. Um, I think those topics are interesting. I think I do have racism. I think I am racist, you could say. You know, I went so far as saying in a video that I am a pedophile, and I chose those words specifically because I have in the past had a sexual attraction for children, for underage women, women under the age of, you know, consent or whatever. And so to me, that's a pedophile. I haven't um, had sexual intercourse with anyone under a certain age, but um, I th- from what from what Jesus says, you are basically molesting someone when you think about them sexually. So even in those terms, if you do that, if it's um, if the contact is undesired, then it's molestation, right? If the contact is desired, so if someone desires sexual attention, then you could say that's like you're fondling that person and they're fondling you back. But anyway, I do choose my words rather carefully. Um, am I a white nationalist? I guess that's the question when I bring up Ramsey Poll, Ramzpaul. Um, I would say I'm not, but I think the arguments are interesting. In much the same way, um, arguments for black nationalism are interesting. Arguments for any national um, nation building based on your own race, based on an ethnicity. Those are interesting arguments. Why that's good, why that's bad. Um, you could say Gandhi was an Indian nationalist, and he was a relatively peaceful person. Anyway, let me try to get more into the core of what I wanted to say here. So, I've been listening to Tim Pool. I've been listening to um, even John Mearsheimer, I believe, before the conflict broke out in Russia. I wonder if it was after it broke out or not that I started listening to John Mearsheimer. Anyway, it doesn't matter too much. But, you know, I think it was first Ramsey Poll. I might have, yeah, learned from him first about the invasion of Ukraine. And when I first heard about it, I was very scared. I was very scared. I felt my fear being triggered, and I thought about what my life would be like. My life is already pretty bad, and I know this is just a lot of complaining, but that's just what it is. I mean, call it what it is. Um, but I became even more scared because I have plans, I have hopes. They're very small right now, but I feel like some of those things would be dashed if the economy goes into the toilet, which, um, you know, could happen if there's an invasion of the Ukraine. Whether that's true or not, I think everyone has their own economy, and everyone, you know, um, deals with a certain level of wealth based on what they attract into their life. Um, but then again, that's one of the things that I claim to know, but I don't actually know. If I knew it, I probably wouldn't be afraid. I could probably say that, you know, rising inflation, rising oil prices, um, would not necessarily affect me too terribly, and I could still enjoy a certain level of wealth. But because I have so much fear about my future, and it kind of feels like the chickens are coming home to roost. I live a lifestyle that is very depraved. I think myself, along with most Americans, would have to admit that. Um, I think just the fact of being born in America and never working against institutionalized racism, never working against um, what the military-industrial complex, what we see in our yeah, our military-industrial machine. We spend more on the military than all other countries spending on their military combined. We spend more on our military than all of the other countries spend on their military. And if you combine all of that into one, we spend more. So we also sell a lot of weapons and arms to other countries, manufacture a lot of those things. So I think we can say that we're very bloodthirsty, barbaric, ruthless, murderous. We're very murderous people. And if you find that to be true and you do not then work against that, work against it in yourself and work against it in the world, then you're accepting what's going on. And you are essentially pulling the trigger on people. You are murdering people. So I think collectively, Americans, if you're not actively promoting peace, reconciliation, but furthermore, moral values, one of which would be all violence is wrong, then you are actually advocating murder, destruction, peril, economic slavery, and torture, all matter of ills that we see going on today. I know that's a harsh stance for many people. Many people will hear me say that and say that that's not true. And again, I go back to if I know this, and if I don't know it, why should I even say it? What standing do I have to say it? So, um, why don't I go into violence? My view, my belief in what is violent and whether violence is wrong. And I will say here, as I've said in the past, that I do believe violence is wrong. Um, and then you must define violence and I would say that I basically go along with what Jesus says about violence. He's made, I believe, 2 videos discussing the gamut of what is violent, and I believe he would agree with me as I say this, but don't take my word for it because these things are pretty important, and you must understand that what I say, how I say it, you know, my general tone, all contribute to the message that I'm portraying, and that is ultimately, my own opinion, and I can't speak for someone else. No one really can, unless they're at a level of agreement and maturity and love, you might say. And I don't think I'm very close at all to the level of love that Jesus and Mary and others of their ilk are in. So anyway, I'm just presenting what I've heard from my own filters. But basically, my idea is that violence is everything from harming someone uh, to bruise them, all the way to inflicting a mortal wound or breaking an essential part of their body's structure that could kill them. So basically, all the way to like a slap, kick, or punch, or all from anywhere from a slap, kick, or punch, all the way up to killing someone, I think is violence. And I am saying that all violence is wrong. So I'm saying slapping, kicking, punching, backhanding, um, pushing someone violently, um, uh, shooting them, taking a weapon against them, a sword, a bow, an arrow, anything. All of that is unloving. So that's all the physical manifestations of violence. Now, I would also say aggression is unloving. Aggression is intimidating someone. It's manipulating them, controlling them, becoming angry at someone, even brandishing a sword or a gun, drawing a gun on someone. That is also violent. Expressing an intent to harm someone is violent. And then we can go even deeper, and we should. And I would say having an intent, even unspoken, especially unspoken, of violence towards someone, having anger towards them, having judgment towards them, uh, feeling a desire to control them or manipulate them in some way. All of that is violent. If I remember, I will link the two videos um, where Jesus discusses all of the ways in which some action can be violent. So you can take a look at that if you're interested. But yeah. I guess I also wanted to say that when I first reacted to the news of the invasion of Ukraine, my fear spurred me to be more proactive in my own personal life. Mandates were going down, and I had felt a desire to go and work out more for a while to get a gym membership. In the past, when I've gotten a gym membership, I went like 3 or 4 times, and then I stopped going. I think there were 2 different occasions. One was Gold's Gym, one was the YMCA, and in both instances, I got a membership and I stopped going. And so far, that's what happened with my recent membership to Planet Fitness. I only went twice, so we'll see where that goes. I do not like the weather that I'm seeing, and I could say that it's depressing me, but I can't really say that, because if you know how the law of attraction works, you can't really blame circumstances because you've made circumstances. I don't know how that works with the weather too well, but you know. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that I had this interesting, feeling of fear, and it spurred me to make changes in my life. But so far, those changes are not long-lived. I think it's been 2.5, maybe 3 weeks since this conflict started occurring, and I've been following some of it. I haven't been following the itty bitty news coming from U.S. news or Russian news too well. I did look up Putin's speech. I think it was an hour-long speech where he discussed his plans to invade the eastern end of Ukraine, or at least to recognize it as like Russian territory. Um, it's funny the hysteria right now, which is like the McCarthy years, where people were trying to root out any communists in American society, and how that's like I might be considered a not a communist sympathizer, but a Russian sympathizer, and I suppose if war does happen, or what we're seeing continues, I could be considered that, and I don't know what they would do to me. I'm not terribly scared right now. I'm sure I would be. Um, I'm sure I could be. I don't. I kind of see myself as a flake. I think a lot of people see me as, because I'm a big, strong guy physically, that I'm intimidating, and I look like I could brook certain kinds of aggression towards myself, and I could handle myself. But at the end of the day, I think everyone understands that human beings are very sensitive creatures, and that's not a bad thing. Um, and it doesn't take much. Um, it only takes a few buttons being pushed before we cave, and really those buttons are any fear points, inside of ourselves, you know any areas of fear, I think any mind control that does go on in the world is um, basically inducing fear in someone, and then triggering that fear until they're controlled. People do say that people are controlled by their own fear, so it makes sense. Anyway, um, where was I going with all that? Maybe I'll circle back around it. I don't remember. Um, yeah, but yeah, just basically calling out what violence is, right? Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of uh, what's going on. I think there's this idea of the fog of war, where um, people on both sides of a war will put out propaganda suggesting that they're winning the war, or good things are happening for their side, when that may not be actually occurring. It's not often until the end of war, I believe, that people actually know where they stand. Like, I'm sure at the end of the Civil War, when, what's that guy's name, went and signed something with Ulysses S. Grant, it wasn't until that point, probably, that the South knew that they had lost the war. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's what I was saying. I don't care about the nitty gritty details so much, because I don't think they're necessarily accurate. But I have been following um, what some people are saying about the geopolitics. I've I followed Chris Hedges. I've read articles that he's written in the past. He's a liberal guy, um, very intellectual, but largely I think he's a very ethical person. I think he's more ethical than many news reporters at this time. I think he's one of our more ethical news reporters. That being said, I learned recently that he is an atheist. He's still he doesn't hate religion, but that being said, I think he only supports religion in principle, and I don't think he. Anyway, I think if you're an atheist, I think you can't ultimately support the quest for truth, but could be completely wrong on that. I do see a desire in him to be ethical, and I think that's very admirable and laudable. Anyway, Chris Hedges is someone I've followed, and his reaction to this war is um, something that I've really wondered about. I think when I finally heard what he had to say on the war, I totally agreed with him. John Mearsheimer is another intellectual geopolitical dude whose opinions I agree on, and maybe I'll also link um, two interviews, or one would have been a speech of Mearsheimer's, and one would have been an interview of Chris Hedges on the current Ukraine conflict. But basically, to tell you what I believe, how I feel about the conflict as it is, um, I think that I would first say that all war is wrong, because all violence is wrong. War is just a violent gesture on a grand scale. So I think all war is wrong. All wars are unjustified. There is no just war, I would say. Um, so that means that what Russia did in invading Ukraine was wrong. Just like how we invaded Iraq was wrong, and all the other wars that we've engaged in are wrong. I think that we have no moral standing to um, assist the Ukrainians militarily. I think it is wrong to provide them with any guns or any ammunitions. Any work we do to assist them ought to be maybe like food and clothing, and maybe um, protecting certain infrastructure that would allow people to survive the onslaught that they're experiencing now. But any assistance with arms, any military assistance, I think is, in fact, immoral, unjustified, unloving, and we shouldn't be doing that. That being said, I think that America did provoke this war. It is my belief that um, NATO has encroached too far into the into East Europe, and I think we were wrong for doing that. I think we've been flirting with Ukraine and Georgia to um, bring them into NATO, which is basically, from what I understand now, NATO is something that was made to supposedly protect Europe from any Russian attack, or more specifically, Soviet attack. And now that the Soviet Union no longer exists, ultimately NATO should not exist. But because Americans are a warlike, bloodthirsty people, um, we need to have crazy military expansion all over the world. So that's why NATO exists. We need to have bases in Asia, in Japan, in Korea. We need to have, I think we have a base in the Philippines, could be wrong about that. I don't know where we are in Africa, but I think we have a lot of presence, or at least we work a lot with Israel. Of course, we have NATO in Europe. I don't know what we're doing in South America, but I think there is this guy who wrote this book called Blowback, talking about all the bases we have across the world and how we seem to expect that we won't have any blowback. But of course, you will have blowback when you have an aggressive um, military organization in any country that's not yours. So, um, that being said, I want to remind you that I think all militaries are, uh, you know, war machines, and all of them ought to be disbanded. I wrote once in a little article that I put on my blog that if I were king of America, and I say that because, if I were king of America, it's just saying, like, if I had a personal choice, if I didn't have to go through a legislature, and of course people would say, well, that means you're a dictator. But to me, it's more of an exercise. It's like you as a voter, or you as a decider in any country. What you do, think, and say does actually matter. And I think it would be good for anyone to ask themselves what they would do if they were queen or king of a country, if they had absolute control, if everyone looked to them to to for any operations in the country, if they were looked to and asked, what ought to be done before they did anything, then what would you do? Now, such a thing does not exist, because people are always reacting to their country people, and what you do, think, and say does actually matter all the time. So this is a different discussion here, but let me comment briefly and say that basically we can't look to or blame all of our leaders for what we see happening in our country, because what is happening has a lot to do with you and me. So you only have to look at yourself to see, you know, if in other words, if something terrible is happening somewhere, you must always ask, what can I do? How can I better myself and change myself for the better, to affect that in a better way? And what have I done to contribute to that thing taking place? Sometimes it's very specific to what you've done. You can actually cause a very direct action, but even the indirect actions have, a direct cause and effect relationship. So like if if the environment is collapsing around you, um, you're having a direct impact on that collapse because of your diet, because of the excess in your life, because of how you consume things. Those things have a direct, even though people would think that's indirect, they're very direct. And then there's more supposedly direct actions you can take where you actually, you know, um, kill a uh, member of your country. If you kill a neighbor or someone who you have a feud with or what have you, that could be considered more direct. But is it more direct than the other actions? There, Jesus has talked about how just having a sense of superiority over someone, which is basically a state of judgment that you have towards that person, that's like right next door to justifying killing that person. So we even have to look at our judgments and say, you know, we're causing massive violence and pain and devastation in the world when we judge others. So a lot to think about there. But basically, if we looked at the geopolitical situation there, I think my basic understanding is that since the 90s, since the fall of the Soviet Union, there have been agreements made that America and NATO would not encroach into territories close to Russia, including and especially Ukraine and Georgia. But as far as Putin is concerned, that is now going on, and we are going against our words, and that to him justifies an invasion. Um, so I think you could say that we have a part to play in this, but of course, as Chris Hedges would have said, we baited them and they pulled the trigger. So both of us have a karmic um, penalty for what's going on in Ukraine. So if you want my thoughts on the Ukraine conflict beyond the fact that all war is cruel and evil, sinful and wrong, then that would be it. I don't know how much time I have on my recording here. I think it would be a good time to end it here shortly. I think that's about all I want to say. I guess I was going to talk about how, uh, do we have any right? Do we have any moral authority to comment on something if we don't live what we're suggesting? So, do I have any authority to comment on violence being wrong when I am violent? And I do think that I am violent. I do think that I am judgmental towards myself and others, and that I engage in violent fantasies from time to time, and my anger boils and rises frequently. So I am a violent person. I'm a very angry and violent person. And can I then say that violence is wrong? Probably not. That would essentially make this entire video self-aggrandizement. It would make it trying to blow up the image of myself. And I think I can basically admit that to be true because I don't see myself living a nonviolent lifestyle anywhere close to like the lifestyle that Gandhi lived. I don't know much about MLK. He certainly talked about nonviolence, but Jesus in the first century, Jesus now, But yeah, I guess I'm just saying that because I wanted to talk about this issue and my attitude towards this issue for some time, and I think there might be some benefit to do that. Maybe it's not all self-aggrandizement or, blowing up the image of myself. It's interesting because what really spurred me to do this is a friend of mine who has a relation in Ukraine asking me this morning what I thought about it. And I noticed how even though I received some criticism from him and a very violent cartoon, I noticed how I was determined to continue the conversation, even though, I could have bowed out of the conversation when I noticed that my addictive desire to engage in a conversation, like, it is basically an addiction to tell someone something when they don't want to hear it. When you're basically demanding someone listen to you. At the point that you notice that someone doesn't want to hear what you have to say, it's time to bow out. And I've been working on that in my personal life, not to great effect, but to some effect, I believe, um, where I try not to do that as much. I think, if anything, one thing is true. I've been able to notice to a greater degree, and I think it has something to do with being a vegetarian. I think that's one benefit of being a vegetarian. I've been able to notice when someone loses interest in what I'm saying, and it's really amazing because what I've actually noticed is 95% of the conversations that I want to have, the person I'm talking to does not want to have. So that basically tells me and shows me that I'm not interesting to most people, for one, but it's also beneficial and meaningful to actually see that and hear that in other people. So it's like, even when we're conversing with others, even when we're just having regular basic talks and conversations with other people, you think it's just, oh, this is just what people do. We talk, we communicate with each other. But a lot of it is basically addictive urges and needs that we have, which are completely unloving. It's been a very interesting realization to have and to work with. I think that the bellwether, the proof that people are interested in what I have to say, um, like, or I think I will have actually changed when I notice more people asking me what I think. So when more people come up to me and ask, "What do you think about this, Theo? Hey, this happened to me. What do you think? I've been thinking about this. What do you think about that?" That almost never happens. Very, very rarely. And I think that happens more to someone like Jesus, Mary, Cornelius, um, but it doesn't happen to me. So if it starts happening more, then I think I will have developed in love. Um, if I notice that it's genuine interest in the other person, that they want to know what I think about something, at that point I think I will have developed more and become more moral. But yeah, I'm waiting on that day. So yeah, I think I said pretty much everything I wanted to say. Might have left out a few things. I'll try to link the video of Jesus talking about what violence is, all that it entails. I'll try to link a a talk that John Mearsheimer gave at some university somewhere on the conflict in Ukraine. I think he called it "The Problem of Ukraine." And I'll also try to link a recent interview on Chris Hedges' reaction to, an interview on what he thinks about the current conflict. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful in some way to you. Um, I would tell you Godspeed and go forth and prosper and develop yourself. But I don't think I can say that in good conscience because I don't feel a great desire in myself to do that. Um, maybe maybe I will say such things when I do feel that desire in myself. But There we go. Shall I continue until it's exactly 40? I love the number 4 for some reason. I guess I'll do that. 2, 1.